It was close.
Welcome, everyone, to the Shadûf podcast. Once again, we are live. At the Shadûf podcast, we try to, every week, bring you a new research study or something that will benefit you and, something related to business so that we can get it out to people and we kind of break it down so hopefully it can be implemented. I am your host, Weston Smith, here with Head of Research, Dustin Harding, and Digital Marketing Specialist, Rachel Hansen. Welcome, guys. How's it going?
Good. Thank you. Good. Doing well.
Good. So our second live. Okay, this is our second live recording of our podcast. It's kind of a new thing. Still feels weird. But one of our student interns pointed something out. If we had recorded yesterday, it would be, yesterday was 2/22/22.
Yes.
On a Tuesday. And we would have, if we had recorded yesterday, it would have been our 22nd episode.
You're kidding.
This is our 22nd episode.
Oh.
So
it's just a missed opportunity.
It's a missed opportunity, right?
Dang.
No, and seriously, and our second live recording.
Oh,
so
yeah,
I don't know if that qualifies.
Well, no, because it wasn't yesterday. So
none of it qualifies now. Yeah. I don't know if it would have qualified, I guess I should say.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, it's so sad. It's really too bad. But I don't really care, guys. It's not really too bad. Everyone was doing the 2/2/2 thing, the 2/22/22 thing, probably because they saw our post on February 2nd of 22, and we did a 2/22 thing.
Cute.
I think there's evidence we started a trend.
Yeah.
And it was all over media everywhere.
Yeah.
The whole world,
everyone saw it, and they're like, "Holy cow, we cannot miss this February 22nd of 2022." Like we can't miss that. But it got me thinking about missed opportunities, and I want to ask you guys a question. If you guys back in your life have ever had like this like missed opportunity, like something that could have gone so right, but because of something stupid, something small, it didn't, and you ended up missing out. Rachel?
Okay, I have two. Yeah, so when you first sent this question, I was at the gym, and in the classes I go to, they're like, you can do the burpees or take it out and do 2 squats,
Mm-hmm.
For the record, I always do the burpees. But as you said that, I was like, that's a missed opportunity right there. You could do the burpees and get stronger, or just do the squats, and if that's your level, that's fine.
Wow.
That's a missed opportunity.
That is so motivating. Jeez. And it makes me feel guilty now, like of all the missed opportunities I've had that I never realized.
Yeah.
And now I feel guilty about.
Okay, and then I had one more. Probably everyone can relate to this, but stinking COVID was a missed opportunity for everyone.
Wasn't it?
I had plans to go to Morocco for a school trip, and then COVID happened. And also, so that was a missed opportunity for me. In January, my sister was supposed to go to a concert with me. She's 16, so she had to get a COVID test so she could go. Tested positive 1 day before the concert. So that was a missed opportunity.
No.
It was the worst.
Oh, that is the worst.
So that didn't necessarily change my career or my life, but missed opportunity for sure.
Totally. No, as you said that, I'm like, I remember because my wife and I were, this is actually kind of funny. My wife and I, we've been wanting to go to France for a long time. Dustin, do you recommend France?
France?
Yeah.
France? I don't know anything about France.
I mean, you lived there for 5 years, so.
Yeah, France is awesome.
No, so we've been wanting to go, and so we were planning this trip, and it was actually right after COVID started, so we missed that. But we already knew we weren't going because we found out we were pregnant. So we're gonna have a baby. So that's really what. But then it turns out we wouldn't have been able to go anyways. So
that's true. That was like a missed opportunity, but also a gain in another way.
Oh yeah, it was a total gain. Yeah. Yeah, it was weird because we'd been trying to have another child and it wasn't happening, and then we're like, hey, let's not worry about it. Let's go to France.
It's awesome. At the same time, it all happens.
Right. So
So we keep mentioning COVID-related missed opportunities.
mhm.
I'm gonna
You
kind
have a
of
different one?
I'm gonna play with that. It's still somewhat COVID-related. But
Okay.
I'm gonna play with it. This wasn't the case for everyone, but I know at least a few people that have mentioned, including my family, that COVID was kind of nice in some ways when during the like lockdown, because it's like we don't have like all these crazy schedules. It's nice to just focus on family there. I know that anyway, it was really nice, and it was just like, let's not go back to normal. Let's not go back into that craziness. And guess what? We did, and that was a missed opportunity, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just jump right back into what.
I think even like work from home, like that was an opportunity that we didn't have before, and then we did when COVID happened, and now it's more flexible on whether it was a missed opportunity or not.
Yeah.
Depending on your employer, I guess, if you get
Yeah.
to still do that or not. But one of those things that's like, oh yeah, we said we weren't going to do that, but this is better.
Well, that's the thing. Like, it's just adaptation, right?
Right,
It's
right.
like roll with the punches kind of thing.
Yeah.
But no, I agree. Like, I loved even though everything was very chaotic, I loved. Like, I had a really good time. Like, we made some good memories with my wife and kids, being stuck down, just hunkered in at home, nestled at home. So, but yeah, so definitely missed opportunities, some new opportunities for people, and basically what we want to do is just make sure that people don't miss out on opportunities, and so we want to just spread and disseminate this research knowledge so that people can jump on these opportunities, jump on these new chances when they come around, right?
On the flip side, though, I'm always devil's advocate.
Of course.
So, on the flip side, though, you don't just want to not think about it and go for opportunities, right?
Right.
Because in
Taking
fact,
a calculated jump is
Yeah.
better than taking a calculated jump is definitely better than just jumping in
yeah.
knee-jerk reaction style.
I mean, there's been times in my life where it's like, we just feel like we should make this change or whatever, and you do it. But on the business side, you got to be careful, right? Which really leads into this topic where companies, the topic that we'll be discussing today, but sometimes companies see opportunity, whether that's like a brand change or a packaging change or some type of investment. I don't know, just different things that are outwardly.
Suddenly they're just changing things up. Suddenly,
yeah, and
a
customers
new
see
policy
that,
maybe.
right? Yeah, and new policy, perfect example, and they don't give it a lot of thought, or maybe they give it a lot of thought, but they don't give their customers a lot of thought through that process, and so they go for that opportunity, and it ends up stabbing them in the back. Like,
I immediately thought of when companies change their packaging and they're like, new packaging, same great product or whatever on the customer, and it's like, oh, that's kind of weird, but okay, I can get used to it.
Yeah.
Those kinds of changes, and I'm sure they're thought out. They would have to be because it's a big move, but
yeah, no,
maybe not.
Yes and no. I mean,
You hope they are. Right?
There's
Yeah.
certain aspects that they think about, right? Like Tropicana. This is like a classic example from 2009.
I've heard of this. Yeah.
So they decided to change their logo and their packaging and maybe like a couple of other instances, but just their packaging for the juice and the logo changed. They looked into it, right? They actually spent $35 million in an advertising campaign that promoted the new packaging and the fruit juice. I don't even know if that's including.
35 million.
Yeah, and that's the advertising campaign.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much they went in like developing everything.
Right.
But they launched, and they saw 2 months later, after going for these changes, their sales dropped by 20%, and it ended up being a loss of $30 million for Tropicana. and customers went to competitor brands. Like, this was a big deal.
Wow.
And then they ended up saying, "Oh, just kidding," and changing everything back because it was such a big problem.
Wow.
And so this is a company putting millions and millions of dollars into a change or an opportunity, right? But for whatever reason, they were not able to predict how their customers were going to react to this.
Right.
Maybe they did in some sense. Maybe I'm sure that they did some research with different customers to see what was going on. But what we see in the research that we'll talk about today is that you really have to pay attention to a certain group of customers. These are and this group of customers that we'll discuss are the ones that are going to give you the biggest backlash for these opportunities.
It's interesting, and we need to pay attention because, as they always say, the customer is always right?
And it's
not really,
because you wouldn't think that a packaging, like if you like the product, you would think you would still go after it, no matter what the packaging is. But obviously, the research shows us differently. So that's interesting.
Did they say? Was there a conscious reaction of these customers? Did they say what they didn't like about it? Did they say, or was it just like? That just kind of, for whatever reason, rubs me the wrong way. I'm out of here. I'm going to become loyal to another juice maker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, I can't recall like those exact instances. They were upset.
Here's what we'll do.
Customers were upset.
Here's what we'll do. We'll look them up and we'll get some images and we'll post the images for you. So follow us on all of our social media channels so then you can see the photos that we'll post. We'll get some video, maybe put them in the video or something like that. I think it'd be good.
That'd be cool
to kind of see, because maybe we'll see if people agree, like, oh yeah, that was a bad move and they should have.
Never gonna buy Tropicana again.
35 million, jeez.
Yeah, it was bad.
They saved money by not doing research.
But not really though, because then
No,
they switched back.
Because it blew up in their face. Yes.
Yeah.
And maybe they just didn't do the right research.
Yeah.
Like, so for instance, in this type of situation, if you're going to be changing the branding, who do you, the branding for instance,
right.
Or maybe you're changing the price or whatever it is, who do you focus your research on? Are you going to be focusing on your customers that are already committed to the brand or your customers that aren't yet committed to
that you want to get committed?
Yeah.
Oh, good question. Rachel, do you have any insight on this? Because I don't.
No insight, but I have a guess.
Okay.
I would say the maybe ones.
The maybe ones?
Yeah, the ones who are in are already in. But the maybe ones might be like, oh, well, I'll try this juice this time. And then get hooked on something else.
I guess it's just like if you have a small established base and you think that this move can get you a large possible base, then maybe like even if some of those people jump ship, you're still getting more in than are leaving, right?
Yeah,
it just
that's
so
true.
maybe it just kind of depends on where you're at. I mean, I know for a lot of the marketing that we did in the companies that I've worked for before, there was a very established demographic, and it was always the goal to expand that, to widen that, But then when it came down to, so we'd always say like, okay, we're going to do this and try and reach to a new, a new customer base, But then when we'd finalize it, it's be like, we can't do this because it's going to alienate our current customer base, and so they'd shut it down.
Yeah.
Yep, that gets tricky.
Yeah, it's interesting because as I've consulted for different companies, it's funny the focus that they have, and
Right.
And sometimes they're like, we only want to talk to customers that are experienced with our product, or experienced with the industry, or that makes perfect sense. But it's been interesting to look at. Some of them are like, no, we only want to talk to people that don't know anything about us, versus, oh, we want to talk to. Actually, I don't know that I've ever had one that's like, I only want to talk to the very most committed customers that we have.
Some of our actual customers.
Yeah, some of them are. Yeah, what's interesting is that this research that we're looking at, they propose, and we can't obviously like link this to the Tropicana data specifically, but the data that they've covered in their studies, it shows that it's those committed customers in certain instances for certain changes that you make that are going to be the ones that give the biggest backlash. And most people would think, oh no, but there are committed ones. They should be more resilient to change, right? But in a lot of in some cases, they're actually the ones that are
a little bit more
opposed
temperamental
to the change and most likely to react.
I wonder if it's because they feel like familiar with the product. Like if you have a friend that comes to you and does something dumb, you're gonna tell them that was dumb. But if it's like just an acquaintance, you wouldn't say anything. So maybe because they're familiar, they feel comfortable reaching out,
vocalizing,
or vocalizing their opinions.
Okay,
yeah,
that's interesting. I also thought on the other side of it with the decision makers, the business owners, whatever, and so let's make this change, and I know that they'll be fine with this, you know.
Yeah.
So they kind of have this like they think that they know.
Oh, they've come in because of what we've done, and because we know them. So these changes aren't going to affect them.
Right. Interesting.
Now this is a difficult part. So I mentioned how in some instances some changes are going to affect your negatively affect your committed customers, and some changes aren't. Right. It depends on the change. And what this research ties us to, and really, there's no like, here are the changes you want to avoid. Right. Instead, what this does, and it's really cool. There's a way to measure what changes you need to be very careful about, and which ones maybe aren't going to impact your committed customers.
Really, like what area of?
So what it comes down to is this. What they call, and it's kind of been in existence for a while, but it's a psychological contract. Okay. So this is existed in like business leadership and management, where when you bring in an employee, yes, you have like a written contract and yada yada yada, but then along with that employment, the employee kind of has this psychological contract that really hasn't really been said or communicated. It hasn't necessarily been communicated.
Right.
But they expect that in their minds, you know, I expect that I'm going to be treated this way, or that my working condition is going to be such and such and such. And when the company, even though this contract may not have even been communicated, when the company violates that contract, that psychological contract, they get very upset. And this paper talks about how, by the way, this paper it was published in Journal of Consumer Psychology, and it's titled "When Good Customers Go Bad: Psychological Contract Breach in Committed Brand Relationships."
Okay.
And they show that this same process takes place for customers,
not just employees.
Because
we were just talking about employees.
Yep.
And that makes sense because some employees think like, oh, I'm gonna start working here and I'm gonna move up the ranks according to this schedule, and they just think that and they assume that that's going to happen, and so they kind of adopt that. And that's what you're saying. They kind of come up with this internal contract that was never spoken by anyone else except in their own heads.
Yep.
A lot of them sound like expectations too. Like, oh, I expect to be treated like this, or given this, or because they've either seen it or heard it or someone told them, or maybe they just expect to be in their mind when those are shattered.
Yeah,
that's annoying.
Yeah.
Actually, let me look at this, because they mention that they are similar to expectations, but it's not all expectations.
Okay.
Go in line with the psychological contract.
Really?
It says expectations carry with them a likelihood of occurring or not occurring. So with an expectation, it's like, okay, I expect this, but it may or may not.
Okay. Yeah.
And they arise from relationship norms and things like that. But it says that let's see. So all brand transactions and things carry these expectations. But a psychological contract is different in that consumers believe that the company has promised that the change will not, that for instance the logo will not change, whether or not the brand has made such promises.
And that makes sense too, because an expectation, like you can be disappointed with something that happens or doesn't happen.
Right.
But with something, for example, like the changing of a logo, that can disappoint people, even if it's not anything that really affects them, right?
Yeah, a logo change doesn't affect them, but the contract, if in their mind it wasn't supposed to change,
Right.
and it did, then that, could be upsetting.
That's upsetting.
That's
That's so
interesting.
So this is another good example. So Netflix, when they changed, let's see, 2016, I think it was,
Okay.
but they changed their price structure,
Mm-hmm.
and
This
it
was
was
a big
this
deal.
big deal. They never promised that it would never change.
Yeah.
But consumers had in their mind that promise was there, and it led to people filing suit. Like they were promised that this was a lifelong price
Interesting.
that was actually never promised.
It's never promised. Was it? If I'm not, this is reaching too far back, but was there some issue when they promised not to increase the price back when they were like doing the DVD, mailing the DVDs? Do you remember that when they were mailing? That's how that was kind of the
Maybe
origins.
they attached that promise to
And then it carried
future
over.
services.
Or sometimes there's like different contracts you can get, like through your phone provider, that they'll give you Netflix, and then if that goes up, but that's not a contract related specifically to Netflix, so they could file a lawsuit against Netflix.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Anyways.
So that's these contract
Mental, internal contracts.
when you violate those contracts that you may know nothing about as
Right.
from the business side, but when you violate those things, so for instance Tropicana, like again we don't have this data, but maybe they weren't looking at their committed customers, because this type of contract really only is just the strongest with your committed customers.
Right.
And so
They're the only ones that have had the opportunity to even form those internal contracts. It's not like you start. I mean, like, there's probably some beginnings, but like this, from the second you're introduced to a company, it's not like suddenly you're making new contracts or something like that. But I think there is a start there. I mean, it can start from the very get-go, right?
Yeah.
Which is funny. So I've got to bring this up just because it needs to be said. I don't like the term, but it seems fitting here when people talk about Karens of the world, right?
Yeah.
Now that's kind of, the meaning of a Karen is kind of evolved, but this is typically what you see, right? This is like something happens and they get wildly upset and they feel like there's been a breach of contract and that they should be compensated or something so much so that then you see like people throwing fits and like thrashing around their arms and legs while lying on the ground in the middle of a store, that kind of thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because and everyone is looking like in horror at these actions, these childish actions of this person. But internally, what that person is experiencing is like someone promised something to me, and then they're not fulfilling it, and they're just brick walling me, and they're not, and they won't hear me out, right?
That's a good relation to Karens. And I also wonder if, because I think about brands that I'm loyal to, and it would, like, you would want to wonder why. And a lot of these companies probably don't tell consumers why they changed the logo, or why they changed the packaging, or why they updated the policy.
Right.
Because they don't really need to know. But as a consumer, I would be like, hey, I wonder, and that might be just my marketing brain, but I would wonder why. I would be the Karen wanting to know why. Just like, why'd you do that?
Right.
Yeah.
And if you're not given respectful communication in return, then that can be upsetting too, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of like a proceed with caution kind of thing. But
Yeah.
and and here again, nowadays people refer to Karens, anyone who calls into a customer service like what are you complaining about? It's like you can be totally level-headed and people will call you a Karen because you're bringing up something that you didn't like, and that's like, it's not the same thing. What we're talking about is
Extreme Karen.
Extreme. Well, a violation of this interesting contract that happens within people's minds when they're committed to a brand or a company.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
So the trick is, as you said, like, do you just proceed with caution, right? What I really like about this research is it's very applicable. It's very applicable to. So you can actually go through as a company through surveys.
Right.
You can actually measure the degree that people think certain attributes of your company or brand or price or whatever it is in this contract, in this psychological contract or not. And it's pretty easy. And then what you do is you measure everybody's commitments to your company.
Right.
And then you can see, okay, this is the chunk of customers these are committed customers who also believe that whatever we're about to change is a psychological contract. We need to watch out for this. How large is this group, and what is the potential downfall with this group? So you can kind of get a sense of this before you start making those changes.
Wow. So they can map all this out. You can.
Yeah, it's easy.
Okay.
So for instance, one of these, so they have 3 studies. Two of them were the first and last study were just kind of a scenario based,
okay.
Right? So not with a real company, but the second study was with a museum that they actually they did some of these tests with the museum.
Really?
For a decision that they were about to make. And so they tested the impact of that decision, which was pretty cool. But in all these cases, it's pretty easy. All you do is you have, whether it's price, whether it's logo change, whatever it is, whatever those items are that you're thinking about, it was a 4-point scale.
Okay.
That they asked people to rate each one of these, and that's 1, there was no promise made. 2, there was a suggestion of a promise, nothing actually said or written. 3, a strong suggestion of a promise, nothing actually said or written down. And 4, a written or verbal promise that has been made.
Okay.
So even if there wasn't a promise at all, the company is asking consumers or employees if they think there was.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So saying there was no promise made.
There wasn't at all.
Yeah. And some may believe this to a degree, that there was never anything said or written down, but they still rate it as a 4. That yes, there was a written or verbal promise.
Because it's written in their psychological contract.
in their mind,
Okay.
right? So that 4-point scale kind of gives you a sense. Okay, how many feel like this is an agreement, a contract, and how many don't?
Wow.
And then you can just measure. Where's commitment? There's different measures for commitment that you can use. Why did I? Oh, it's because they measured it at a different time. This was commitment. It was so they had 4 different items in this scale, and it was just let's see, a 7-point scale. So sorry, that wasn't it. I'm all over the place right now. But it was a 4-item scale. They just measured the degree that if the brand were not available at the store, would it bother me to choose another brand? I consider myself to be highly loyal to the brand. I would be very happy to use the brand every time I have a need for whatever the product category was, or I enjoy talking about the brand with friends.
Okay.
Right? So they would measure commitment
Interesting.
that way.
Yeah, so to cover like different, like would you consciously acknowledge that you're committed to this, but then also they had tests to see if they would take actions that show commitments, that show their level of commitment to that company. That's really interesting. What I think is fascinating about this is that you have like two levels of study, because correct me if I'm like totally off base here, but it seems like theoretically you could run a study on a logo change or something, and even if it was with customers who were committed, this is a big maybe. Okay, even if it was with customers who were committed, you could say, "Hey, do you like this logo change or not?" And they might say yes, but if you didn't check with that person and you did it anyways, then it could still upset them because of this contract. Because it's not just whether they like it or not, it's whether they feel like you said that this wouldn't happen and it did.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if this didn't happen and it did, what else did they say wouldn't happen? And now I can't trust you anymore, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
you know?
And being a loyal customer, it's like you trusted them to weigh in on the opinion. So even if you say, do you like this? Then go ahead with whatever you're going to do. For the customer, maybe it feels like, oh, they value what my opinion is because I'm a loyal customer.
Right.
Yes, go ahead with it or no.
That's interesting.
Yeah, the way that I would probably word that survey is like, okay, we're planning to make this change,
Mm-hmm.
and then you ask what their attitudes toward that change would be, how much they'd be willing to pay for your product if you made that change, things like that to
Right.
kind of capture how they're actually going to feel if you went through with that.
Right.
So a good example, a good example for that is the museum study that
Okay.
they did, because the museum apparently had a package deal thing, and so the researchers went to the actual customers of this museum. They measured their commitment. They measured, whether this package deal was like part of this psychological contract, like that they could renew this every year, and because the museum had decided not to renew, not to allow people to renew,
Okay.
but they hadn't announced it yet.
Oh.
Okay, and so in this survey, the researchers measured their commitment and how the degree that this renewability of this the renewability of this package deal was part of their psychological contract. And then they said, and here's an upcoming change with this, and with the museum, and they're no longer going to renew these package deals. And it was very very much so for that group that saw that as a psychological contract and that were highly committed. It hurt their intentions quite a bit toward the attitudes toward the museum.
Really?
Yeah, they were really upset with the museum.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, they were but it's in the study, and the study stated that they were thinking about making it, right?
They were going
I
to.
think that they were going to.
Well, they were going to, but they prefaced it to the customers that they were. But then did they end up making
I'm not
them?
sure how they prefaced it, and I'm not sure if they went through with it or not.
Oh, really?
I feel like price is a really touchy one too. That's
Oh,
something, that can bug a customer way more than a logo change or a policy change.
Yeah, you'd
That's
think that.
touchy.
Price seems to be one of the big ones.
Yeah.
In a couple of these studies, price was like one of the main changes that they looked at.
Mhm.
It may have been all of them. Yes, it was all of them.
Really?
Yeah. So price is a big one.
Oh, and it definitely is, because that's what affects the people the
Right,
most,
right.
right? And it's interesting, though. I mean, when you consider, inflation and things like that, there are certain markets that people know are going to be more that are going to fluctuate more than others, right? It's not like you're going to drive to Maverick and be mad that what yesterday gas was 10 cents cheaper.
That expectation is there that it may change,
and it's built up over time, right? But it's so. But with price, okay. So this is what I think, and maybe this is a good takeaway from this. But it's like I said before, proceed with caution. I think the caution is just effective communicating, right? If you're going to make a change and you kind of need to do a little tiptoeing. You need to say and effectively communicate, by saying hey, expect this, this, because unfortunately the customer doesn't see the back end of the production of the product or service. And so they think, why are you increasing prices? You just want more money. And it's well, maybe that's the case, but also maybe it's because costs of production have increased for the company and they can't make it. They can't provide this product without raising some prices,
Yeah. And I think the museum could have done that tactfully. They could have said, this deal is expiring next month. Hurry and get it while you can, and build it up that way so that customers know it's happening. But they could also maybe get some more customers paying in on the deal before it closes. And then it wouldn't be such a shock of, we can't renew next year because it's we told you this deal wasn't happening next year.
Right. Yeah. And have some leniency with allowing people to kind of grandfather into a policy if they want or not.
Yeah. What's cool about this is you could actually test things like that.
Yeah.
So as a company, you can say, okay, we know this is a pressure point. We know that this is a psychological contract for a lot of our committed customers. So let's send this survey out with different ways to approach this. Maybe today with inflation and everything, prices are increasing. So you may be in a position where you don't want to change the price, but you have to change the price.
Right.
And so that's a given. That's going to happen. So let's test different ways that we can approach this and communicate this and see which are the most effective ways that are going to kind of help compensate for this psychological contract breach.
Well, and that's why a company has to be able to kind of work well internally, is because you need to talk to the finance people, and then the marketing people need to say okay, what do I need to understand so then I can translate the message and get it out to people so they understand this. But then, like you were just saying, which is what we're all about, you have to do research on it. You have to, if you're making these big decisions, or even small decisions, put just a little bit of effort into doing some research. And if you don't know how, there are plenty of people who do know how. Find someone who can help you so that they can think through these things and maybe test different strategies on different, even just the wording on what you sent out, or how far in advance you let people know,
Yeah, and then if it does go south, you have data to back up your decision, and it's we didn't just do this because we wanted to. We did it because A, B, and C. Right. And then from customers or clients' understanding, it's okay, makes sense. Moving on.
Exactly. And based on research, how do we approach this? How do we make it seem less like a contract breach? And then you're prepped that way. And because it can have a big influence. So I mentioned how the museum study, they saw this reduction in attitudes toward the museum, right? But it also some of the other things that they measured is it actually for those committed customers who felt like it was a breach on their psychological contract, it increased competitor ratings. So,
Really?
so they liked competitors more as well.
They said, you're changing price. I'm going to go here. This looks better.
Yeah.
Suddenly, this ability to become loyal to a company is suddenly transferring. Like, has this potential to transfer. Like,
Yeah.
that's a dangerous situation. That's really funny.
And then the other measure that they did is they measured the attitudes towards the company before and then again after the change, and they looked at the difference in attitudes. Okay, and this difference in attitude. So from when if a customer, the difference between a committed customer thinking that it's outside the bounds of a psychological contract versus inside the bounds of a psychological contract. So when they felt like it was a violation, it increased this negative difference by 134%.
Oh,
So
wow.
so it drastically dropped their attitudes toward the brand when they felt like that contract was breached.
Oh my gosh. It's a serious thing. It's not
Serious.
just like,
Yeah, that's a lot.
oh, that's dealing with some powerful internal emotions.
Yeah.
But they had no idea they were
Yeah.
in control of
So,
or running against.
I didn't know we had this many Karens. What's going on?
Yeah.
I'm here again.
No, it's
No, but that's a good example, because a company can say, well, I don't care, I don't care about them. But, well, you don't have to care about what they think, but it could be to your own detriment if people are feeling this way. Even if only a few of them are vocalizing it, there might be people who aren't vocalizing it who are still feeling like you're doing this, and therefore they may not make as much of a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, but they're still kind of reaching one foot out the door.
Yep.
To other brands, because then if another brand pops up right at the right time, then it's like, oh, this is perfect, because I was just thinking, you know what, I'm kind of getting tired of who I've been with over the past 5 years,
Yeah.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, so it's just clear from this that, and we joke with the Karen thing, but really they're unbeknownst to you, oftentimes there are customers that really do care about different attributes of your brand, and so much so that they feel like this is a psychological contract that you have made to them.
Right.
It's so important that you are aware of that, because chances are you're not aware of those psychological contracts, right?
Yeah.
So you need to be aware of those things as you go forward and as you move and make changes and as you adapt.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be aware of that.
Right? Yeah, so in summary, really quick, when it comes to, I was just thinking as someone who's done some graphic design, I love looking at logo evolution. And sometimes there's been companies that I've been loyal to who changed their logo, and I'm like, wow, that is so much better. You really updated things. You made it, And so I get, honestly, it's really cool. I'm like, wow, so it feels like a good experience, So it's like, so it's not saying always stay the same, stay stagnant so that you don't upset people. It's just, it's just saying, hey, take a minute and consider these people. Make sure that there's, making sure that this problem of this unwritten rule, this contract that they've built in their minds that exists, unfortunately, you can't control whether it exists or not, but you need to make decisions accordingly. Otherwise, it could be bad.
Yeah, and I think liking a logo and not, that's totally your opinion. Because you
Right.
could like it and I could not. And these contracts, these psychological contracts, it's totally whatever my brain likes or thinks versus whatever yours does. So every person is different from
Right.
person to person.
See, because an example like that, when a company changed their logo and it was good for you, you liked that. That's because that logo change was not a psychological contract.
It didn't breach anything in my mind.
It didn't. Yeah, but so it's important that companies understand this, but also, okay, what proportion of our customers are going to really get ticked off if we make this logo change, and how do we minimize that for them?
Right. That's great. Okay, so let's do a quick summary. So the problem is that these contracts, these psychological contracts, exist in customers' minds, unbeknownst to the company, and they can be whatever, and they can be created however, like, so maybe there can be some preemptive clarification, so that, because sometimes if you have a sign that says get 2 for 1 deal or something, maybe people start to think, oh, this is what that means, because they're not elaborating, or they're saying something vague or something like that, and so they think oh, I'm going to go get this deal, find out that the terms and conditions of the deal are not what they expect, get really upset if it's something that violates, not just if it's a bad deal or they can't get the deal, but if it violates kind of this contract, this trust that they have in this company, that the company will honor something. So these contracts exist, and the problem, and so that's the problem, and then the solution is, what would you say the solution is?
To measure those things, to measure what attributes of your company do these psychological contracts exist, and by what proportion of your customers do think that those contracts exist, and to especially for your committed customers, make sure that you're tracking those things and that you're aware of any future changes that have to do with those items,
right?
And then do studies and things to make sure that if there are changes that you need to make, that you do it wisely, and that you're testing out the best way to approach that change.
That's awesome.
With those customers.
That's great. And this was a really cool study. Remind us what it is, the name of the study, in case people want to go research it. I know we mentioned it earlier, but...
Yeah, so it's When Good Customers Turn Bad, Psychological Contract Breach in Committed Brand Relationships. And this was in Journal of Consumer Psychology. So...
Okay.
Yeah.
Just so you know, on the side note on this, we do take very seriously the studies. Many of the studies that we talk about on our podcast are studies that we have done in-house. But when we pull research from an outside source, Dustin here is very critical, very, very selective, and makes sure that they're trusted, well done research. He pulls from credible sources. Thank you, Rachel. Yeah, credible sources that, because so much research can be done erroneously and it's not reliable, right? So just an assurance of quality, I guess. Well, that's all the time we have for
stamp of approval.
the Dustin stamp of approval. I like that. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Whether you joined us live or whether you'll be listening to the podcast later, it's always great to have you. Go ahead and feel free to leave comments and also leave reviews on podcasts if you're listening to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Apple Podcasts is probably the best place to leave a review, and we would appreciate that. Otherwise, just wait for our next episode. Thanks for joining us. Cheers.